Um, well, welcome everyone. This is the information session for the Select Climate Program. If you have wandered into this webinar room by accident, you are very welcome here. Don't be surprised if we talk about a program on climate organizing. So if this is your first time joining us, we extend a warm welcome to all of you. We like to think of ourselves as a big community, and if this is your first time, it will be hopefully not your last time, and you will quickly become part of what we see as a big family. And this program, the Select Climate Program, is about a nationally recognized award-winning effort to bring new voices into the environmental movement in Canada. This program has been recognized by Environmental Defense actually last year as it won the award for disruptive innovation, and specifically because the program was engaging underrepresented voices in the environmental movement. And you'll learn more about that as we go along. Before we get started, I want to just talk about the organizations behind the Select program. The School for Social Entrepreneurs is otherwise known as SSE. And as the name would suggest, it is a school for people who want to start some sort of new social venture, and that could be a social business, a not-for-profit, cooperative, or just a project that doesn't get incorporated but is trying to make the world a better place. We also work with Environmentum, and Environmentum is an organization that is dedicated to mitigating climate change by helping people adopt environmentally responsible behaviors. And what Environmentum really excels at is helping people understand why they themselves might want to take action on the environment, and not for reasons that are necessarily the ones that are typically presented by the environmental movement. But why would someone who is not necessarily very excited about the environment, why would they might want to take action? So Environmentum helps people identify those reasons and then to feel the confidence that they need to move ahead. And I see there is just a little chat. Vince, did you want to add anything to that before we move on about Environmentum?
Oh no, just right here to do what we can, and I got all the chat, so if there's any questions for you, I'll jump off mute and make sure to ask them.
Okay. Well, while we're on you, Vince, why don't you just take a moment to introduce yourself, because I'll introduce myself after this slide.
Oh, okay, sure. Well, I'm Vince from Environmentum, and sometimes, our project director had me put the MI guy on my little mullet name badge here, they call it. And that's just for motivational interviewing. So that's just one of the big things that I do, which is it's an evidence-based strategy to help people find change for themselves based on their own motivations, like what you were saying. So that's part of what we're going to be doing, is helping you to figure out how can you communicate like an environmental message that somebody might actually want to take on, instead of kind of having some of that doomy gloomy stuff, which doesn't work too well. That's not really our mojo here.
Right. Thank you, Vince. And then in the School for Social Entrepreneurs and Environmentum are both projects of Tides Canada, which is a large charity that does common good projects across Canada, and we are both projects of Tides Canada. So a little bit about me. My name is Marjorie Brands, and I'm the co-managing director of the School for Social Entrepreneurs. And SSE Ontario has been around for a little more than 5 years. Actually, we're now on our 6th year. And we are part of an international global network of schools with fellows all over the world, particularly in the UK, Australia, India, Ireland, and Scotland. And so we are just delighted that all of you are interested in this joint program between Environmentum and SSE. In this info session, we will hope that you'll walk away with an understanding of our goals, the program's goals, how SELECT could help you build the work that you're already doing in community, and not ask you to do something new, but to ask you to do something that rounds out and deepens the work that you're already doing. We'll go over how the SELECT application process works and answer any questions that you have. So that you can participate in this webinar effectively, we just wanted you to know that you are listening to this webinar by default on your computer if you've logged in. If you're having any trouble with the audio, hopefully that's not the case because we're pretty far into the webinar, but you can always switch to the phone by clicking on the audio button at the bottom of your screen, and it will give you the login or call-in information there. If you would like to raise your hand or to send us a signal that you want to say something, you can do that in the Q&A session and just click on your name, and then there's a little drop-down menu where you can do that. There's always the chat function, and Vince, who is on the line now, he will be keeping track of all the questions that come in, and we'll hold them until the Q&A session. You can also mute yourself by pressing *6 if you're on the phone, or *9 to raise your hand. So you do not actually have to be logged in to be able to participate if you're on the phone. So again, *6 to mute, *9 to raise the hand. We will be recording this webinar, so if you don't feel you have to write down any notes furiously, we will send out the recording afterwards so you can really focus on what we're saying. Okay, so what is the background for SELECT? Why have we started this program? There are many, many reasons that we thought this program needed to be created last year, but I'm just going to highlight a few statistics and facts. And one is that by 2020, Canada will welcome more immigrants annually than the population of Windsor, Ontario. So that's about 340,000 people per year. So every year now, or soon, Canada will be adding an entire city. Toronto itself is already just behind Dubai and Brussels as the city in the world that has more foreign-born people than any other city. Vancouver is actually number 4 globally. So Canada is an incredibly diverse and culturally vibrant community, but only 3.7% of the Canadian environmental nonprofits frequently collaborate with racialized and ethnic communities, which is really a shocking statistic when you think about the fact that every community in Canada and the world indeed depends on the environment for water, clean air, food, shelter, clothing, and all of the other things. Then there's also a very strong correlation between being a newcomer or a racialized person or someone coming from another social equity-seeking group, and that could be the queer community, people with disabilities. There is a very strong correlation between social marginalization and vulnerability and environmental vulnerability. Because we see that in natural disasters, the people who are often left out of political debate and economic decisions are the same people who are often left out of relief efforts or get the information about warnings too late or not in their language. And then once the disaster hits, they get the relief slower. So this is part of the reason that we think there is a very strong correlation between social, economic, environmental, and cultural issues, and that you cannot disentangle all of those things. And a holistic and comprehensive approach to all of these issues is more effective than working only on environmental issues with green, environmentally sound light bulbs, which do not take into account some other issues. So here's just an example of what we're talking about. The environmental movement is proposing certain green solutions, which all of us in this program are very enthusiastic about. I mean, we love green solutions. So including more cycling lanes, in a city. We love that idea. The issue is that, for example, Black and Latino cyclists face fatality rates up to 30% higher than other cyclists. That's a statistic that comes out of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And given that not everybody experiences these solutions in the same way, we cannot simply just say, we're going to do green solutions that are technical in nature, like changing light bulbs, without understanding how those solutions affect different communities. Another example would be we want to create a bunch of new solar power, renewable energy companies. But if those renewable energy companies simply just create an environment where we have an economy powered by the sun, that's wonderful. But if it's still powered by only a small group of people, certain communities, and not all of the communities, then we still have some issues that we need to address. So green solutions are not, in our mind, colorblind. And the SELECT program, I should just say, it's not only focused on racialized and people of color, but it is a heavy emphasis because of the strong correlation between social marginalization and those issues. But the program is open to everyone, including people who don't face as many social barriers. It's just that this program really wants to look at how do we advance both social justice, advance social justice, economic justice, cultural justice, and environmental justice all at once. So Canada is transitioning to a green economy. As an example, Ontario's cap and trade program in 2017 generated $500 million to kickstart the transition in this province. And we think that if we don't take a proactive approach to how this transition happens, again, we will get a green economy that is, maybe powered by the sun, but only by some communities. So the SELECT program is really designed to bring new voices into the environmental movement to make sure that we are not forgetting social equity at the same time that we are advancing green equity, or the green economy. So some of the key messages in the program are that climate change will affect your community. As I mentioned earlier, there is no community on this planet that does not depend on the earth for water, clean air, food, clothing, and shelter. So if your community needs any of those things, well, then climate change will affect your community. If you were on this call or webinar, our assumption is that you are not the sort of person on the average person on the street, and that you see that there's an issue and that you would like to figure out how you might help minimize the impacts of climate change. And so this program is really set up to support you in those efforts. We think that through a program like this, you can begin helping to eliminate the causes of climate change that are negatively affecting your community, and that also most of the time we think of climate change as this like doom and gloom horrible thing that's happening, and it is obviously something that is not desirable. However, there is also a tremendous opportunity, because as we transition to a more sustainable economy, a green economy, there's going to be all kinds of new work and new economic opportunities. So the communities that have been left out of the current and dominant economic system now have an opportunity to leapfrog everybody who's making this transition, to leapfrog into the 21st century green economy, which is growing and has an opportunity to maybe correct for some of the ills of the current economy. So the upshot here is that we think that you can not only help eliminate the causes and minimize impact, you can select the future. And that future we'd love to see as a very blue and green planet with that is socially equitable. So how does the SELECT program feel? I just want to echo something that Vince said before. A lot of environmental messaging is very doom and gloom. We're all going to die, and the polar bears are dying, and everything is horrible. And we don't deny that we have some very big challenges, but the program is really a joyful gathering of people who see the opportunities to create the kind of world that we want, and that we are all stronger if we get together and we put our collective strengths, or we pull on our collective strengths. We ran this program last year for the first time, and so we wanted to just go over what some of the program achievements were. Last year we recruited 25 community activists, and you can see some of their pictures to the right, and you'll see that people come from all different backgrounds and ages and interest. So if you feel that this program might be of interest to you, you're probably right. The program was free and is 6 months. And again, the program this year will be free. Collectively, the students in this cohort delivered 9 pilot projects in their communities. Students, not every student decided to run a project, and some students decided to double and triple up on projects. So the number of pilots reflect that people were working together. The training program for 2018-19 will build off of the strengths of last year's associate fellowship, and will look quite similar, but there are a few changes, and I'm just going to go over what the program looks like now. It will be a free 2.5 days of boot camp training on climate change impacts, mitigation, communication best practices, community engagement strategies, and social entrepreneurial climate action models. That's a lot to take in, and really I just want to emphasize that you do not need to have any prior experience in climate change or the environment to be a part of this program. If you are a human, that is good enough. Human, and we would even entertain polar bears, but so far we have not received any applications for polar bears. But if you have a stake in this planet, then you are very welcome in it, and you do not need to have a background environment. The 2.5 days of boot camp training will then be supplemented with deep dive workshops, which are customized to this cohort. So, as we get people coming through the doors, we will find out what their particular interests are. And if we say, okay, there's a very strong interest in the group around food security, well, then we would organize a workshop on food security that you could come to afterwards. We also, at the School for Social Entrepreneurs, run programs regularly for all of our community, and you would have access to all of those workshops also free. So I will be going over that in a little more detail in the next slide. The training program is also supplemented with communications and organizing support. So we do offer, for any project that you might want to undertake, access to funds, design tools so you can create your communication materials, printing, social media and media support, access to subject matter experts and volunteers, and access to community-based nonprofits and social investors. Some of the sample workshops that we ran last year, just to give you a flavor, intro to influence versus authority, how do you make changes when you're not the boss? How to negotiate like a diplomat, because often, creating this kind of very complex social change requires diplomat-like skills. There was a webinar on life as a human rights advocate, media relations 101, unstick your thinking, how to think like MacGyver. So how do you solve problems with very few resources? That's something that if you're a social entrepreneur, you have to be very good at. Introduction to the business model canvas. If you think you want to work on a project that has some kind of economic component. Green careers, what do you need to know? And that workshop is really, designed to help people think about finding new job and work opportunities in this sector. We also supplement the sample workshops or the workshops with one-on-one coaching, and that coaching is carried out by both SSE and environmental staff who have our respective strengths in economic and social organizing and environmental change, and we're a pretty well-rounded team. We are quite proud of what we were able to accomplish last year, even though it was just the first year on a pilot. Here are just a couple of quotes from prior participants, and I'll just read the first one. And that's from Nicole Doré, who said, "As a result of my participation in Select, I met like-minded, passionate, and ambitious community leaders while also receiving the resources, support, and knowledge that I was looking for." And we hope that people's experience in cohort 2 will be, the same, if not even better. I wanted to give people a quick overview of what, or not overview, but a feel for what kinds of projects people took on last year. Again, there were 9. I'm just going to go over a couple. One was the Root Care Youth Immersion program that 3 participants worked on together. And this was to create workshops and farm visits for BIPOC, that's Black, Indigenous, people of color, youth interested in growing food in the cultural context in which we grow it. Another was Work Wonders, which was I'm just trying to move the panel over so that I can read the text. Just one second. It's an online medium to help diverse leaders looking for a career in eco-businesses, NGOs, and other eco and socially conscious organizations. So really the idea here is to be a matchmaker between green employers and people who do not or face a lot of barriers to finding work. And these particular organizers used Prototyped, a website in-person design session with youth. The next is this Diaspora dinner parties, and these were diaspora parties for dinner parties for diaspora communities to learn about local substitutions for imported traditional ingredients to reduce food miles and greenhouse gas emissions that cause climate change. So really, this is a lot of times in the environmental community, messages about climate change might come to a diaspora community that are around, the polar bears are dying and we need to do something about it. And it just is something that a lot of people do not feel is particularly relevant to their lives. And so what is happening in these kinds of parties is very culturally targeted and relevant information. And there's just a lot of fun. And, climate change doesn't have to be, again, it does not have to be a doom and gloom thing. We can build community and come together and break bread and share a meal together over something that's very important. Next one was around faith-based climate workshops. So one student, she worked with her community to create workshops in the toolkit inspiring climate action in the Muslim community based on core religious beliefs. So this student identified a Quranic scholar who helped her pull pieces of scripture out of the Quran to help people in her community identify why, if they are religiously practicing, what is it in the Quran that says, you cannot ignore the stewardship of the planet. And so this is, again, an example of very, very targeted messaging. This student, her name is Rania, she is very active in the Muslim community, does a lot of organizing. And so, here she did not actually have to do anything new, in the sense that, we didn't ask her to go start a completely new environmental practice outside of what she's doing. It's do what you're already doing. You're already doing gatherings in the Muslim community, and you're already maybe talking about Muslim social responsibility. Well, then you can incorporate climate topics on top of or integrate that across what you're already doing. So it's not something that is meant to be additional. It is meant to enhance and enrich the conversation and to show that there are opportunities to address some of our social goals through the resources and opportunities of the green transition. Next steps. Okay, so you've been hearing about the program. What would happen if you wanted to participate? Well, first you need to ask yourself, is this program right for me? The program will run from October to April, so October 2018 to April 2019. The time commitment is relatively small. I think people are worried about that October to April timeframe, but let me explain. There is a mandatory 2.5 days of training, and that will happen from October 17th, 18th, and 19th, with the training or half day on the 17th in the evening, and then full day on the 18th and a full day on the 19th. So that is the mandatory training. All training after that is purely optional. You come if you want, if it interests you and you have the time. And we hope you'll make the time, but you do not have to. Then you do not have to carry out a community engagement project, but we would certainly encourage you to, because we hope that you'll find a way to apply what you've learned in the training to your current practice. But again, you're not required to do a project. The project that you do carry out, if you choose to, should be something that is already just integrated into what you're doing. So it does not require a huge amount of extra time on top of anything. Then the training commitment, as I mentioned, is the 2.5 days of training. Then the ongoing training is scheduled over the October to April timeframe. And if you're in the program, you will be notified of all of those training opportunities. Okay. Project funding and support. If you choose to do a project, we are able to make up to $1,000 per student available. And in some cases, we were actually able to do more. We can't promise that now, but for various reasons, more money became available, and we think that there are potentially some opportunities for it to be more than 1,000. But rest assured, it will be up to $1,000 in most cases, and you would carry out a community engagement project. The activities must be carried out in Ontario because of the nature of the funders that have backed this program. You can combine your funding in teams. So if multiple students come into a project, we would actually give that priority, and we might actually grant a little bit more than 1,000 per student, but again, no promises there. It's really available or subject to the available funding and the number of projects that are proposed. The project funding and coaching support is open to anyone who has completed the 2.5 days of training. They're willing to carry out their engagement initiative. They must be willing to report on the initiative. So if you take on this community project, you do commit to giving us some kind of report at the end. And then finally, you must be an adult resident of Ontario. The application process is, we hope, fairly straightforward. If you go to www.sseontario.org, you will come to the front page, and then you'll see here there's a button where you can click here, and it says Learn More about the Select Climate Program. Presumably, you've already been on that page if you're on this webinar, but in case you haven't, just click on that link, and it will take you to the main information page for the Select program. And I have clipped out a little bit about about the application process. So the application form is available online. It is due by midnight Eastern on September 21st, 2018. If for whatever reason you need any help with that, meeting that deadline, or you need an extension, or have some sort of special need around, let's say, being able to complete it orally, just let us know. We are very, very happy to make any kinds of accommodations that people need. This is something that is important to mention. The application can only be completed in one sitting. Unfortunately, our online form portal does not allow people to start something, save it, and come back. So you have to finish it in one go, which means that it probably would be better for you to access the preview application on the program page. So I'll just go back. If you see here, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but this thing that says select preview application, if you click on that, you will get the Word version of the application, and you can prepare that in like, word processor or on a notepad, and then you just type in your responses. As I mentioned, it's due September 21st by midnight. You do not have to have any prior experience in the environment. You don't need to have a project idea already. If you just want to learn more, you can come in, and then we will work with you to identify a project that you might want to undertake, or maybe you want to join somebody else's project. I mentioned the accommodations. If you have any special needs, we can help you with those. And we expect to notify all the students by September 30. So I think I have been talking at you for quite some time, for about half an hour, and I will now stop talking and see if you have any questions.
Well, I want to jump in and just say thank you on behalf of everybody. Marjorie, there is one thing that came up just for us to basically talk about. So if people are busy from October, like during the actual dates of the program between October 17 and 19, what might be different ways that they can engage with SSE and Environmentum? So maybe if you want to start, and then I can talk about Environmentum.
Okay. Sure. Well, we had that case last year. There were some folks who couldn't come to the training but wanted to be involved. We did, as I mentioned, those deep dive workshops. And so we had a workshop on in energy efficiency. There was a deep dive on food waste, one on mass transit, and another one on active transport, particularly bicycling or cycling and walking. And so people were welcome to come in off of the street to those workshops, and they were mixing with people in the SELECT program as well as other members of the SSE community. So, there you would be welcome to attend these other workshops, which will be publicly advertised. If you have not already done this, we would encourage you to sign up for the SSE newsletter, because the SSE newsletter does have, well, that's basically how we advertise sort of big workshops and learning opportunities. So that's the best way to stay informed. Or you go to the SSE workshop page, and you'll see that it's updated dynamically. We're constantly adding things and taking them off, and so it's not a static page by any means. And then even this morning, we received an inquiry from someone who said, I can't join the SELECT program. It's not good timing for me, but she wanted to volunteer. And so that's another way that you might be able to help us organize the program without actually having to make the big commitment. Vince, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, what I was just going to add, it sounds like that's a great way for people to connect with some of SSE's content, to connect with some of the learning goals and objectives that Environmentum is going to be bringing forth. It's certainly not going to be a complete replacement for the SELECT program. That said, Environmentum does periodically offer training in motivational interviewing, which is the evidence-based communications for how to accomplish a behavior change goal, like how to actually communicate about these things. Mm-hmm. So if you were interested in that, you could go to environmentum.org, and if you're spelling that out, there's no middle N, so environmentum.org, and you could sign up for our newsletter. We don't send out a lot of messages, maybe like one a quarter or something like that. So that would be one way to keep in touch with us about the next one. I think we're probably going to do one in early December. So that's us. We did have another question, if you're ready for it, Marjorie.
Sure.
It was, how many applications did we receive last year, and how many were accepted? And then we have another question after that.
Okay. Believe that we received about 35 application last year and we accepted 25. So it's a very, it's not a super competitive program. Now it was our first year. We do expect that the competition might be a little tighter, but we don't really like to think about competition in that sense. We are all part of one team, and if we start thinking of each other as competitors, we've already lost. So if we find that there are just a lot of people who want to come into the program and there just aren't enough spots, well then that's more evidence that we can present to funders that, hey, we need to do this program a lot more times. And for the people who didn't get in last year, it was only because they didn't meet the eligibility requirements. They were like in Nigeria, and we just, we can't take people from Nigeria because, well, we don't have the travel funds to be able to bring people from overseas and to deal with the visa issues and so on. So, the people that did not make it into the program last year there was some sort of technical reason that they couldn't join, or they, were only able to make half of the, one quarter of the training or something like that. But wherever we could, if it was technically feasible to accept them, we did. And the only limits on the program is really just the capacity of our classroom, and so far we haven't hit the overcapacity where we just couldn't run the program. But if that happens, we'll just go back to our funders. And I want to just acknowledge our funders for this program. This program is very generously funded by the Toronto Atmospheric Fund and also the Catherine Donnelly Foundation, both very committed to environmental and social justice.
Thank you for that, Marjorie. We had a follow-up with that question, which says, who delivers the workshops? And who are the experts that are going to be delivering?
Do you want to take this one, Vince?
Well, I can take some of it. How about we split it?
Okay.
Well, I'm an expert in motivational interviewing. So I'm a member of a global network of motivational interviewing trainers called MINT, M-I-N-T. So this is part of my expertise. So that's, I am an expert in behavioral science concepts. The person who will be delivering content around social justice has more than a decade of experience in a social justice nonprofit organization focused on health equity, doing work both in indigenous communities and in Africa. So that's some of the sort of credibility, the experts on the environmental side, if you want to talk about the SSE side of things.
Sure. So SSE, the classroom approach is one where all of us are experts. Everyone in the room comes with an expertise of their lived experience and whatever training they've had. So really, we want to draw on everybody's expertise. Now, there are people who facilitate the process where all of that expertise can be harnessed. And so the facilitators include myself, Krista Koulis, who is the other managing director. She's the lead managing director of SSE. We have a lot of volunteers and mentors who come into our program regularly. Just a little bit about my background. I have a background in international development with a particular focus on private sector development, and then the intersection of the private sector with political and social change. I have been working on climate change adaptation and mitigation for the last 15 years, particularly looking at the intersection of climate change and poverty. So this is something that, is not a casual interest for me by any means. The other experts in our program have backgrounds, with, MBAs, finance, legal, communications, HR, marketing, and then, advocacy, social justice, you name it. I mean, youth organizing, we basically have everybody. I mean, if you wanted an expert, we can probably find that person for you. So we, as I said, we don't do the workshops just, it's not cookie cutter. We will wait till we see who comes into the program, and then we start designing workshops, the deep dive workshops around the interest of that class. I hope that answers the question.
I think it answers it very well. And what's interesting, just to kind of give the boost for Marjorie, you haven't seen like how to work a network until you've seen Marjorie in action. It's pretty crazy.
Thank you.
So around that, we had actually another question, which was, is there any program content or support? Actually, I think I missed one. Anna, I'll come back to you in a second. We'll answer this one and we'll come back. Is there any program content support, like a deep dive workshop around financial or long-term sustainability?
That is so funny that you asked this question, because we are currently working with Duca Credit Union around research on that topic specifically, and we are planning to organize a workshop on that topic, and we're hoping that a lot of select participants would want to come for it. So yes, the answer is yes.
So there's a bit more there, but we'll come back to that in a second. So Anna mentioned, aside from subscribing to the newsletters, is there any other tips to becoming involved if you are unable to make it between October 17 and 19?
Absolutely. This is a welcome, open community. So if you have a very sort of specific situation that can't be accommodated by this particular program, just send us an email at info@sseontario.org, or you can contact Vince or me offline, and we're happy to chat about your situation and see the way that you might best plug in. But you know, we've never turned anyone away because there wasn't some place for them to match their interest with their time. Vince, you're on mute.
Thanks. I just added those email addresses into, oops, I sent it privately. My bad. Sorry, Rachel. Let's send that to everybody so everyone can have that information. So those are the email addresses, so you can pull them out of the chat and get the exact spellings. So the two info webmails. The next question is nonprofits sometimes struggle with grant timelines and ensuring continued project life. Has anyone in the past cohorts continued their initiatives or projects as a social enterprise or business?
Yes, so SSE has been in operation for 20 years in the UK, and as I mentioned, 6 years in, almost 6 years in Canada. And so one of the things that we see is being critically important is not that, you know, a program is a one-off deal and you just do the program, you know, maybe create a website and then off you go and good luck, you know, we hope to see you in 20 years when you're super successful. We realized that first off, a lot of projects fail. And that's a part of the learning process. This is a school. This is not a, you know, incubator where we want to see our venture capital return on your investment, on our investment. No, this is a place where people come and they learn by doing. And if they're not successful with one project, they may be successful with the second or the third or the fourth or fifth or whatever. But once you're a fellow at SSE, you are a fellow for life. And you are welcome to come back. And we encourage people to come back for their entire lifetime as social change makers. And we see that people do carry on these projects, and sometimes they give up a project and then start something new, but each time they start something, they are stronger and have learned from their mistakes prior. In terms of last year's select cohort, yes, there are students who are still running their projects. I was just talking to one this week, and she has run a couple of other things since starting an entire new venture in Select, and is planning to apply. We have a fund that we haven't yet announced, publicly, but no worries to announce it here. There is a funder who has agreed to reinvest in cohort 1. So basically, cohort 1 will be offered the opportunity to apply for more funding and more project support so they could deepen the projects that they did last year. Because, we realize that you're not going to change community's reality with a couple of diaspora dinner parties. You got to go deeper than that. So our commitment to this is multi-year, if not multi-decade, until we basically die and we can't keep going on. But then we'll just hand the baton to somebody else. So.
We have another question here, which is, would the network connections extend to other communities or organizations doing similar work, like, let's say, Mars or Impact?
Yes. So we are an we do environmental organizing, and we do that environmental organizing and social change organizing through an ecosystems approach. And that's really the idea that, you don't have a healthy forest with just frogs in it. You have to have frogs and bears and, geese and water lilies and all of everything, right? So we are just one actor in this ecosystem, and we don't pretend to be everything to all. And so all of our students regularly share other opportunities from other programs. We have deep relationship with Mars and the Green Networks and the League of Entrepreneurs. I'll just mention that. That's a global network. BMW Responsible Leaders, which is also a global network. The School for Social Entrepreneurs, global network. The Hub. I could go on and probably list 200 organizations and movements that we work with.
So that was all of our questions. So maybe if you have any other questions, you can ask them now. And in the meantime, would you like to share any sort of final words, Marjorie?
Okay, yes, I'll share some final words while people think of any, any final questions. Sorry, I'm trying to get this to advance. I've been having trouble with my mouse. Yes. So just if you decide not to apply for Select, we're sad because we would love to see you in it. But if you take nothing else from this this information session, and it is just really the idea that there is no climate justice without social justice, and we hope that that's something that you'll spend some time meditating on, and it may be something that you're already very active on if you're on this call. And we'd love to see you join this effort, because the size of the problem is so large, and we don't have the, no one person, no one organization or movement is going to be able to solve it on its own. This is a system level issue, and we really need to link the economic folks who are trying to create a prosperous world with the people who are trying to make this a sustainable world, with the people who are trying to make this a socially just world, with the people who are trying to make it a culturally inclusive world. We need all of those things, and a comprehensive approach is really what's required. And we think that Select is one of the opportunities to start doing that in your own backyard. So thank you very much. And we are here to answer any questions. And Vince, you have something you want to say?
I do, which is we have a few more questions.
Okay. We've stimulated. Okay.
You're such a stimulating speaker, Marjorie. People can't hold themselves back. You can see it. This is the relationship that we have here, and it's really very positive. But and we are excited to create that relationship with you. But where does the training take place?
So the training will take place in downtown Toronto. Have we booked everything for Annex or Regent Park, Vince?
Regent Park, I think.
Regent Park, yeah. So last year we held the 2.5 days of training at the Center for Social Innovation in Regent Park, which is at 585 Dundas Street East, which is just east of Parliament on Dundas. So it's quite TTC accessible. If you drive, there's ample parking. It's not too expensive, and the building is accessible. So that's where the 2.5 days of training will be. But the other ongoing training will happen around town, and that's really just depending on you know, if like we're doing something around a kitchen, maybe we would be in a kitchen I don't know, in Etobicoke. And then there will be, you know, a lot of things happening at the Center for Social Innovation Annex, which is at Bloor and Bathurst. But we move all over the city, so it's really hard to say exactly where those trainings will happen.
There is also on the first half day might actually end up being at friend's house.
Okay, right, yes.
So that's it, right by St. George Station. So it will all be like highly transit accessible. And we had one more question, which was maybe somebody just wanted to get a really like great wrap-up story. So could you just use like maybe one example of a previous project that kind of maybe that was a highlighting project that shows kind of like what happened in cohort 1 and what we're looking for in cohort 2?
Yeah, well, maybe I'll talk about Verna and Laura. So I didn't include their project in this in the slide deck, but so 2 of our students decided that they would work on basically gardening, home gardening workshops. Verna, if you ever meet her and if you come into Select, you will definitely meet her. She's a very larger than life kind of personality who is just, you know, waxes poetic about gardening and just loves it, and can't understand why folks have trouble with food security when they could just on their balcony start growing a lot of food. So she and Laura, who's a mega organizer, got together, and I don't remember how many workshops they put together, but this thing was like nine gardening workshops. You know, several hundred people went through these workshops in their community to learn about home gardening and really to start getting a culture around seed saving. And
can you leave that off, Jack?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, sorry. Someone's on. So they ran these different workshops, and things got some momentum, and they have started. I forgot which community they're in. It's somewhere in Scarborough, but I've forgotten the name. Anyway, they have started the very first farmers market in that community. And so now they're beginning to bring all of the different vendors to one place to start selling produce. And that also creates a potential opportunity for people who are doing home gardening. Maybe they would start selling some of their produce and finding some opportunities there. So that's just an example where it started off as a, you know, kind of more environmental thing that built on some community organizing, which is now moving into an economic opportunity.
So we had one more question. So I think we're going to be wrapping up soon. So we had one question from Robert who wanted to ask his own question verbally. So,
yeah.
Okay, Robert, hello.
Hi, Marjorie. So
Robert is a STAR SSE fellow.
Well, I don't know about STAR, but I am a fellow, and it's true. It is lifelong. You can never escape. So I work up north, and I work partly with some First Nations communities. So I'm not a First Nations person myself, but I'm a little bit worried, or not worried, I'm just curious about how the program's diversity sort of objectives might be satisfied by someone like me who's totally white bread. And whether I need to put together a team of people or whether I can just participate myself and then sort of go up there and facilitate. You know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, no, I think I understand the question. And I'll just say that, you know, our position is that social justice is a responsibility and a benefit to everyone, no matter what their you know, family background is. So everyone has a part and a role to play in creating social justice and racial justice and you know, cultural inclusion. And in fact, there's something wrong when it's only people of color who are doing that, right? I mean, there's something really, really wrong with that. So last year we did have a number of people, well, I'll just say white people who are not people of color in the program, and they are very welcome to come into the program. In fact, we are overjoyed when we have people from all kinds of backgrounds coming together around this bigger question around how do we want to organize our societies, what values do we have, and how do we enact them and make sure that they are not just ideas and that we're living it. So,
Okay.
Robert, absolutely, you would be welcome, and we would obviously, in terms of training, we always encourage people not to parachute into a community that they know nothing about and they have no connection to. But I know that's not the case with you, because you've been working with Indigenous communities in the North for some time, and you live there now. So, our assumption is you wouldn't be going and just, like a bull in a china shop, just trying to change things without, you're supporting.
That doesn't work anyway.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So you're supporting their community goals, and this program would help you think through what is the intersection between the environment and all of these other questions that you're already steeped in. So no, the quick answer is you are welcome, and everybody else in this program is welcome.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Hope to see you on the 17th.
Yeah, good. Thank you. So Vince, any more questions?
I don't think so. So I'll say my final goodbye and just say thank you to everybody who came. And Marjorie, if you want to say your last word here.
Well, just delightful to see a bunch of new faces today, and we hope that you will become part of the family. We say this is like a black hole. Once you get too close to the event horizon, you can't get out. So you're very close to the event horizon now. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Okay.